Leo, I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
How can we achieve a more equitable society and a better financial system in the United States?
Well, it's really going to depend on who you ask ultimately. For me, I'm going to say that most of it's going to be rooted in things that I'm not going to mention specifically here. Holy shit! Did I really just do 20.3k damage? God damn. Anyway, I'm sorry. I'm playing Wizard 101. Anyway, it's so I think that
it's awesome.
The two primary things to me are going to be socialization and democratization of the productive forces and a decommodification of the markets in which they operate. So that's essentially to say that the productive forces, I mean, that is kind of a self-explanatory term, but just for anybody that might not know, it's just the ways that humans produce things, the technological capacity that humans have for producing the things that they need to continue to survive. And then obviously commodification is the concept of selling things on a market for a profit.
So is that just another term for the means of production?
Yes, productive forces and means of production mean effectively the same thing.
And what was the other thing you said?
A decommodification of the markets in which our productive forces operate. Essentially, things are no longer sold on markets for profit. So like the energy you use to power your house, you wouldn't have to buy it. The food that you eat, you wouldn't have to buy it. You wouldn't. There wouldn't be what is effectively, quite frankly, a paywall behind the things that humans ultimately need for survival.
But how would you motivate innovation without having the profit motivator there?
The same way that humans did it before there was the profit incentive. Well, not specifically, but I guess I don't know like specifically how that's going to be done. I don't really claim to know that, but I do think that it is blatantly obvious that in fact for most of history humans were capable. I don't think the Egyptians built the pyramids because they were going to make a lot of money doing it. Now, granted, people might say, but they had slaves do it. Sure, but they didn't do it because they were making money. So humans have always done things without the profit motive. Look, we especially see this with intellectual endeavors. Albert Einstein, Richard Feynman. Now, some of these men may have made money, maybe like writing books, being authors more so than being scientists, because let's get real here. Science does not make you rich. But so I guess I would just reject the idea that we're going to need a profit incentive to motivate innovation, or that's the best way to do so. I think that honestly, I'm sorry, no, go ahead.
I would agree with generally like coming up with innovative ideas, yes, but I'm more talking about technological and innovation in the realm of productive capacity. I don't.
Wait, you mean like a capacity to advance the productive forces?
Correct. I don't think that the robotics industry would have come as far if the motivation of making more profit would not be there. That's my example.
I think YouTube is a good example, because if you look at how a lot of YouTubers work, like how I did it, is you put the content out for free. There's not a paywall. And then if enough people see it and want to support it, then you have basically people who are supporting monetarily, but you put it out for free first. And I think you could apply that same sort of idea to other things.
But that isn't what Leo's advocating for.
I know, but I want it like I am like
he would be saying
behind you guys.
He would be saying that you're putting it out for free and it's always free, like you wouldn't make a profit off of it.
Well, yeah, that's not necessarily.
That sounds a lot like a Star Trek future, which I think is a good.
We also have to keep in mind that it's not just that I'm saying that we should decommodify things, but we have to keep in mind the first thing that I said is very important to that. We don't need to commodify things if our societies aren't centered around profit to begin with.
Right. See, it's
not if we democratize. Yeah. If you sort of communalized and democratized the productive forces, then I just don't think that we would need the concept of commodification.
But then the problem becomes that you have no incentive to make the productive forces more efficient and
I think we do. And that would be to, I think that the what's going to incentivize that is the further elimination of human labor in order to make the things that humans need. Let's all be real. Humans don't want to have to labor to make the things that humans need. That's why humans have technologically advanced to begin with. I don't think it has to do with, I'm going to make money. I think that that's like a tangential to the primary reason that humans have technologically advanced throughout all of their history, because they're trying to reduce the necessity of human labor to the production of the things that they need.
Right.
That's the motivation.
If you're thinking about it in a communal system, it's like everybody is going to provide what they are able to, and the incentive to provide what you can to others within that commune is that you are getting help from other people. So you can't, you don't want to be a leech, basically. So like when you like eat food from the grocery store, like you didn't grow it, you didn't farm the food and like harvest it and drive the truck to the grocery store. You didn't do all these things. Like other people have to do these things in a society. But I think in I don't know, socialism or like, communism is kind of a scary word, but in these types of
communism, you're going to lose 500 subscribers, AJ.
I guess my point is that if you diversify the output of production to everybody, you basically diversify.
Wait, what?
Well, you're talking about like, you produce things and then it goes to the rest of humanity. Your resources that you're producing aren't being centralized in any one individual or any one group of individuals responsible for that business, right? It's sort of a worker owned.
I kind of think it's already that way. I mean, for the most part, I think the output of our economies is largely much more social than so this depends on what are you referring to, capital output or productive output, because those are not the same thing.
Well, capital output, really.
Capital output is very highly centralized. I think that's a glaring issue in our societies today.
Well, I think it's a massive problem. Yes, I do agree that it's a massive problem, the wealth inequality. And don't get me wrong, I don't touch economic stuff because I'm not that great with it. But I would proffer an argument that because the capital is centralized in certain groups or individuals of groups who have an incentive to make more profit, it rises that they try to innovate to make that production more efficient. That in a way that
is that why they innovate, or do they innovate to maximize capital output, and that the advances are merely tangential to that goal? Because that's the way I look at it. I don't think the capitalist innovates for the sake of innovation.
Production output. That's the way that the innovation works. Like robotics.
I'm sorry. Can you repeat that?
So capital output is only raised. I mean, that's not the only way it's raised, but the innovation capital output is raised by increasing production output.
So I'm going to say yes in some senses and no in other senses. If there's an increase in variable capital inputs, then I think that you might see an increase in productive outputs, rather capital outputs. If there's an increase in constant capital inputs, I think that what's going to follow from that is actually a trend downward in capital outputs. This is actually something that many people would know as the tendency of the rate of profit to fall. And at its fundamental core, it's not actually something that most classical economists would even deny.
I'd like to respond to the point creationists made earlier about unions, thinking unions everywhere is the solution. My understanding is that unions are necessary when you've got management who are unfairly exploiting the workers. I've seen unions that become so powerful that they run the companies and basically, in effect, run the companies and contribute to further dysfunction. So just because they're unions doesn't necessarily mean that they're good. If we actually have a proper system in place, then that would be better, because then you won't need that extra level of unionization there. So, and I'm not against unions. I think they're very necessary in many companies. I just don't think that they're always the right answer.
So what would the proper system look like? Because there's going to be people like myself who are going to say that the mode of production under which humans currently live is intrinsically exploitative.
Leo, are you an anarchist?
No.
Okay.
Well, we're going to see what we see now. You see people who are, you got the conservative mindset, which is in very simple terms is, oh, it didn't happen to me, so I don't care. Whereas the liberal on the other end is saying, this shouldn't happen to anybody. That's why I care. And there tends to be this kind of distortion. I'm talking liberal and conservative in Canadian terms. I understand it's quite different in the U.S. It's almost twisted the other way around. So almost. So I'm sorry if that seems confusing. Liberals are pro-freedom and all this, and the conservatives tend to be very authoritarian and want to privatize everything. They don't like public services. They're against any socialized kind of programs. Yeah, so that's how it is here in Canada. So I think we have this kind of idealism. These ideals aren't compatible. So this is always going to be a problem as long as there's people who don't agree on things. And this is one of the challenges with society is how, that's the big $1 million question right there, Leo, is how do we find a solution that'll make everybody happy? And no leader so far has been able to do that. Even Oliver Cromwell, as good as he was, ran into all kinds of problems.
I think.
Let's give Snake a chance to jump
Can I
in.
just say, like, it's not
No,
long.
you
It's not
can't.
long.
Yeah, no, you
I
can't.
know Snake wants to say something, but I just wanted to say that.
No. What were you trying to say, Snake?
Wait, I don't. Well, all I was going to say is that the criticisms I would levy transcend the traditional political left-right spectrum. That's it. That's all I wanted to say. Just wanted to provide that clarification.
And the conservatives will come in and say, we need money to measure things, because that's what they always say.
I don't really care what the conservatives say. Most of what they say is really dumb and doesn't align with like any economics at all. And
therein lies the challenge with society. Yes. Go ahead, Snake.
So first, I'll say I have been deathly ill for the past couple of days, so I might sound a little off. But
hope you're getting better.
Totally couldn't notice.
But so I don't understand what's exploitative about economic system where you say if you want me to pay you, you have to do something that I want.
Well, I mean, have you ever worked at a fast food service? I mean, most jobs are like mini dictatorships in America. You know,
and the amount of pay is significant in this too.
I don't think it. Maybe it has something to do with pay. I think it runs deeper than that. So I mean, there's technical reasons why somebody like me is going to consider, like, capitalism as a mode of production to be exploitative. And people like me and Snake are probably just going to have fundamental disagreements about that. Which is not that. I mean, that's not a bad thing. That's not wrong or anything like that.
Well, I want to know where, like, I know we're gonna have disagreements. I would like to isolate exactly where that disagreement is. Like, I think that's
value. It's gonna be on what value is. It's because if value is seen as being rooted in labor, and a laborer is always being paid less in some given labor time for some given contribution in labor time than what he produces for the firm in that same time, then the system is just going to be just definitionally be exploitative. But if somebody doesn't take value to be rooted in labor, then they're not going to agree that the system would be exploitative. So the disagreement is going to be on what value is and where value is rooted. And I think value is rooted in labor provided by workers that are hired.
But if you labor something that no one wants, what's the value in that?
Well, I don't think that broadly societies do that. And labor isn't going to be rooted in like what individual person does.
Tons of
You wouldn't produce something that no one wants.
So the question is, Kent Hovind labors to produce DVD series. Do they have any value?
What do you mean by labor?
Value, maybe?
So, I actually don't think that Kent Hovind that there would be value in that, because he's not like reproducing a commodity. So that's not. If
people are willing to pay for it, then
it has
pay
value.
for what?
Pay for the DVDs.
What about but that would be price, not value to a Marxist.
What's the difference?
Price is going to be the monetary exchange rate of a commodity. The value is the amount of socially necessary labor requisite to the reproduction of that commodity.
You know, Snake, I feel like one thing that jumps out at me is, you know, you can have a capitalist system where there are people who are offering jobs and that are willing to pay people, but it's exploitative if you never raise the minimum wage and inflation goes up and up and up and the cost of living goes up, but you're not paying people more. That's not like that.
That's not inherent.
That's not going to work.
System.
Well,
that is
it kind of is.
Capitalist system. No, it isn't.
Yeah.
No.
Wait, I didn't hear what Mark said because his
inherent.
mic got suppressed. Could you repeat that, please?
I don't think that's an inherent feature of a capitalist system, that the wage gap and price of living should, you know, expand until the wages being paid aren't enough to cover the. I don't think that's a feature of capitalism. I think it's a feature of US and a lot of other, you know, capitalist systems throughout the world at the moment. But I don't think it's intrinsic to a capitalist system. I don't think.
Wait, the difference between wages paid and value to a laborer and value provided by the laborer?
No. The difference between wages paid and the cost of living for that laborer, right?
Okay.
So I guess what AJ is bringing up is that in the US and a lot of other countries out there, that the cost of living is far getting way higher than the minimum wage kind of thing. So that's where inflation is driving cost higher, but the minimum wage isn't being lifted to meet that cost of living or that.
Why do you suppose? But why do you suppose that those who own the businesses would not want to raise wages, but would want to raise prices
or rent
for greater profit?
What was that?
Greater profit. I mean,
yeah. Why are they seeking profit? Why does it seem that profit is what they're seeking over other things?
Because. Well, profit is sort of gives you the ability to access resources and
economic capital, right?
Right.
No bitches, Leo.
And what can you do with economic capital? If you can gain economic capital, massive amounts of it via owning the means of production, then you don't have to labor yourself to earn a living. You're living off of the people that you're hiring to labor for you. That's why you hire them. Ultimately, every worker hired by a business is there so that the executives don't have to do that labor.
That's not necessarily the case, because the executives still have to labor to organize and set up all of this stuff. In a lot of cases,
I don't see that as labor.
The CEO is the hardest working person in the company. In some cases.
But Elon Musk is making Teslas, though.
I don't think that the executives are the hardest working. I think that it's
some
cases, I would say it's
not.
Well, they're generally working
literal hard
hours.
work, like backbreaking work. I don't think so.
But I also don't agree that they generally work longer hours.
I don't.
I think you people are conflating like the guy who owns a local construction company with like the CEO of McDonald's. The guy that owns a local construction company isn't like a CEO. He's not even an owner. So first off, for somebody like me, and I can only really speak for myself here, I'm a Marxist. So when I say an owner, I don't mean the guy who owns a local construction company. I don't even mean I don't even mean the franchisee who owns the local McDonald's in your town. I'm talking about the Jeff Bezos, the Warren Buffetts, the Elon Musks, the Bill Gates of the world. Those are
the shareholders, the ones that do get the profit.
Yes, the ones that own.
Yeah, there are differences, but there, if you can't manage a business like at any scale,
shareholders
it will
don't
fall
do that.
apart.
Let's try to go one at a time.
He's not talking about the people that manage the business. He's talking about the people who actually get the profit, which is the shareholders in a corporation.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying. At any scale, if the executives can't manage it at the corporate scale, it will fall apart, because corporations do fall apart because of poor management. And if
management,
if the local
have we ever seen them fall apart because of lack of?
What's that?
Because I don't think that in the absence of like a corporate executive structure to a company, that it would completely collapse.
I mean,
companies fail all the time.
Well, yeah, I think companies do fail, but I don't think that's because of a lack of some structure. I think it's because they have a structure and it's poor, but not because they're lacking one. In an instance where they were lacking one, I think the workers would honestly end up creating another one. We see this all the time. Like CEOs can be exchanged, whole ass companies can merge, and like it really doesn't mean anything for the average worker, because a lot of this stuff is far more conceptual than what the actual workers do for companies, because these people aren't really doing anything.
Yeah,
And even so, the management that they're
say,
supposed to be doing is pawned
people
off
like-
to all their accountants and their
people like Elon
secretaries
Musk,
and everybody
they
else.
literally do nothing. They do nothing. They do
Well, I
nothing.
agree that the shareholders.
What you're saying, though,
through labor, I agree with that. So I do see what Leo's point is, that the people that benefit from profit is shareholders who literally do nothing except invest capital into the company in the first place. I have some concerns over why would you invest capital, but I realize that, Leo, that you're saying you should have a capitalist system, but why should you invest resources that you have in order to get resources back? It seems like you're saying that, hey, no investing of resources in prospects at all, because there's no point to.
Well, when we talk about monetary investment, I think that's something that would only exist under some form of some system rooted in class society, like capitalism.
Right.
I don't think humans need that. I think humans can socially manage and democratically control the means of production, just like we are at least supposed to be doing with our government institutions, which I would actually argue the large reason that even our government apparatuses, our bureaucratic apparatuses, aren't democratic fully, at least, is because of their influence by those who hold all of the economic capital to operate in their interest, which nearly exclusively comes to the detriment of societies broadly.
So I think there's some truth to what, there's some truth to what you're getting at. But what you're basically saying, it seems to me, is that the CEO position is completely interchangeable with anyone. Like, there's no way you can fail at it, because you could just put anyone.
Well, I don't think I'm saying that. I'm saying more that it's an unnecessary. I don't think that we need one person to manage that. Like,
so why
I think workers, because of the capitalist mode of production.
Because
why wouldn't the rest of the board
capitalism is a hierarchical mode of production. It's autocratic.
So why wouldn't the rest exist? So why wouldn't the rest of the board just take all that salary they're going to pay to the CEO and keep it for themselves, if no one needs to hold that position, or if they can handle it?
CEOs usually do own shares, so they're
actually the way it works is the CEOs get paid a lot, so do the board members. It may not be obvious. There's different ways it happens. Expenses are taken care of, and then of course a CEO is interchangeable when delegation is done properly, is practiced properly.
But my criticism isn't going to be that like CEOs like don't do anything. My criticism is going to be CEOs don't contribute value.
Yeah, my complaint is that they're a bunch of rich perverts.
But see, what I mean by value is, again, probably different from what most people mean as value. I mean something very specific when I talk about value.
Well, contributing labor hours, basically, right?
Well, the amount of socially necessary labor requisite to the reproduction of a physical commodity.
Well, so if the product would change. Sorry, Mark.
Yeah, I just, that sounds like, well, my system doesn't need that, so doesn't have any social value. But the system that we've got,
I didn't say so. I'm not talking about social value. Social value is not what I mean by value.
Yeah, I was going to make a similar point. Like, if the product would change, wouldn't this position be necessary to create that product?
I don't know if I understand what it is you're asking.
So this position would be necessary, socially necessary, to create whatever is being created.
What do you mean by position? What position would be necessary for what?
Let's just take the CEO position of any X company. If you eliminated that and the end product changed, or the profits went down or up, or whatever. Well, I guess, if you could eliminate it and the product would stay the same, then I would agree with you. But if you eliminated it and the product changed and the company fell apart or came into hard times, then wouldn't that be socially necessary labor?
I don't think so, no. Well, first off, it's not socially necessary labor. It's socially necessary labor requisite to the reproduction of a physical commodity. Like, so salespeople labor, but they're not laboring in ways that reproduce physical commodities. So they don't actually, what they do is not value adding to the products that they sell. I think everybody recognizes this. When a salesperson sells the products they're selling, that doesn't make them more valuable. What salespeople do isn't value adding, and that's because value is rooted in reproductive labor.
I definitely disagree with you on that. For salespeople, I mean, if a salesperson's doing something right, they are targeting the person's needs and finding the product that they need. They are actually adding value by.
But what do you mean by value? I don't think you mean by value what I mean by value. I think that's the
problems. I think, but
I have a question for Leo. What do you think makes an iPhone valuable?
The amount of socially necessary labor requisite to its reproduction as a commodity.
The amount of labor it took to create that phone.
The amount of socially necessary labor requisite to its reproduction as a commodity. But I would also say an iPhone can't be reproduced. An iPhone can't actually be reproduced the way that, like, say, a 2x4 piece of lumber for the construction of a house can be, because there's only one. Well, I need to fully express the point here, because there's only one company that sells iPhones, and that's Apple. Mm-hmm. So iPhones aren't. I mean, there's like a really, really, really strict way in which they are reproduced by specifically Apple, or I think it's actually Foxconn that makes the phones. But iPhones are specifically an Apple product. This is what Marx would understand as a monopoly. So iPhones aren't actually reproduced because only one company can make them. Now, a piece of lumber for construction in your house can be reproduced because there's many companies that make 2x4s and 2x12s and what have you.
There's many companies.
I think Samsung actually makes the screens for the iPhone.
I think I would link value more economic rather than socially, because when you sort of say socially, you're talking about a social system that is sort of more does not have an economic system in the way that we have it at the moment. You're talking about a social system under socialism or communism kind of thing.
No, how value is defined. The labor theory of value is not some separate theory for what we ought to do. That's not what it is. It is an analysis of the capitalist mode of production. That's what it is. And I'm going to use some flowery language here, but I think it helps paint the picture. It's a sort of a way to look at the capitalist mode of production and sort of derive its equations of motion. So a Marxist is actually going to say that how I've defined value is what it is under a capitalist mode of production.
Okay, so let me give you an example and see if you can fit value to this, because I'm not sure I'm getting what you're sort of laying on the line here. So I'm a salesperson. I sell modems, routers, and other switches, networking devices, right? You come to me and you go, okay, I need to do this. And I take time to understand exactly what your needs are, what you're trying to do, how secure it needs to be, what kind of distribution system it needs to happen, how many hosts you're putting up, and like basically give you a rundown of the products that are required for you to get that implemented. Am I adding value as a salesperson?
Well, it depends on what you mean by value. See, the problem is, under my definition, no, not. Yeah. Under my definition, no.
So why should that work of me understanding what they need, and then, because they're coming to me to ask me, hey, I need you to tell me what I need to do X, Y, Z, right? Why is that not providing value?
Because it is not the reproduction of a physical commodity at some time and some place.
But without it, the person couldn't do what they need to do.
I don't deny that. That's not in contention. I'm not contending that. I'm simply saying that selling objects doesn't make them more valuable. It's not value adding. If that were the case, the minute you sell a car, the price would go up, but it doesn't. It drops.
But it creates jobs and creates
sure, but that's just not what I mean by value. Value isn't creation of jobs. I've defined what I mean by value.
But that's what we mean by value, and most people mean by value.
Wait, so you define value as the creation of jobs? Job creation is what you mean by value?
It's valuable, yeah.
I didn't ask if job creation is valuable. I asked if job creation is your definition of value.
No, but to that person, right? To that person who's looking for things, the value of a product that does not fit their needs is even like terrible. But what I've done is added to the value of what they actually need. I've pointed out what I don't understand why.
Yeah, that's just not what value means in the labor theory of value.
Well,
so why use the word value?
Because value has a specific usage,
which is not the same as the labor theory of value as it is in normal English.
I don't know what that means.
The way you're using it sort of suggests that there's individuals that are not like CEOs. You're basically saying they don't add to value, kind of thing, and it sounds very dismissive of what they do and what salespeople do.
Well, I'm not saying that what they do isn't requisite to an economy. I'm saying it's not value adding. See, the problem is when you hear me say value, you think I mean it in like some broader, philosophical sense of like sort of utility. You can't look at it that way. Value does not mean utility in this sense. I am not denying the utility, in fact, the necessity of jobs of service jobs, salespersons, but they're not value adding under the labor theory of value because of how it defines value.
Well, yeah, because there are products that people like that don't serve much utility, but they still like it, like a painting.
Yeah, that would be some sort of utility. Like aesthetic value, but that's not value by what I mean.
But why'd you use the word value then?
Because the thing is, the word value doesn't have like one set definition. If I define what I mean by it, I don't see what the problem is. I mean, and I think I've done quite well in defining what I mean by value.
I think you just get further by having like a qualifier, like labor value.
I don't know what you mean.
Well,
I mean, there are qualifiers. There's labor value, exchange value, use value. I have no problem in like distinguishing between those if you need me to.
So I think that some I get what you're saying, and I get your I agree. Value is very, very polysemous. It has multiple meanings. I get that, right? And I understand what you're saying by value. What I don't sort of get is the idea that sort of these jobs aren't necessary, because if they have
no, that's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying they're not necessary. Again, remember, I am not saying these jobs are not necessary. I'm not saying they don't have utility. I'm saying they're not value adding under the definition of value given by the LTV, which is the socially necessary labor requisite to the reproduction of a physical commodity. So if somebody's not like sawing timber, into planks, then they're not doing labor. If all you do is drive the truck that delivers it, you're not reproducing a commodity. You're just driving it places. That nobody in the LTV is going to say that we don't need people to do that, or what they're doing isn't important, necessary, utilitous, valuable in some broader philosophical sense. But with respect to what value means in the LTV, which is rooted in the reproduction of a physical commodity, a truck driver doesn't reproduce physical commodities. They ship the commodities.
That's socially necessary to get it to certain locations.
Yeah, but it's not the reproduction. See, you're focused on the first part, but not the second part. Socially necessary labor requisite to the reproduction of a physical commodity.
Right. But why, if this is a criticism of capitalism, why not use
analysis? I mean, we derive criticisms from the analysis. What? Wait, what?
If this is a criticism of capitalism, why not use the definitions that capitalism?
Well, what I would argue, and what most Marxists would argue, is that capitalism doesn't actually have a definition of value. The way that the LTV usually utilizes value, they're going to say is an objective measure of what value is in the capitalist mode of production.
Well, in a capitalist production, value is dependent upon demand.
Yeah,
I don't think so. Well, I mean, not maybe in some like indirect sense, because in the LTV, it's going to say that value is postulated as a theoretical unobservable to explain long-run equilibrium prices in economies. So supply and demand are going to relate to this, but the question that's going to be asked is why are those equilibrium prices the equilibrium prices? The LTV has an answer. A capitalist can't answer that question.
It fails to explain the price of transportation costs.
Correct.
No. Well, it doesn't seek to explain those because that's not like a value-adding thing. But even then, it still could. That price is rooted in the profit-seeking of those who manage the system.
So it's ignoring half the picture.
What is that half of the picture that it is ignoring?
There's value according to there's capitalist value going on that the LTV.
And what
can't
is value
describe.
in capitalism? How is value defined in capitalism, in neoclassical political economy?
I can't give you like the neoclassical version, but as I
Well,
understand
like
it,
capitalism
hear me?
and modern economics, not in the LTV. What does value mean?
supply and demand is a pretty good way.
I don't think I can hear
Well,
you.
yeah, but
My
that's how we
headphones are actually
measure
fucking
it. That's how we
weird.
measure it. But that's not a definition. What does it mean?
Anyway,
Not how do we
I was
measure
just
it?
trying
so
to-
I think this topic is sort of reached an impasse. So I am going to pose
Wait,
a
what?
question to the panel. It might be shit. So if it is, then you guys just ignore me. But okay. So George Orwell wrote a famous essay claiming that nationalism was the belief that your country was superior to others, while patriotism was the expression of love for your country. Do you think there is a difference, or do you agree that there is a difference?
Perhaps a small one. I'm neither a patriot. And man, I really wish we didn't move on because we were just getting to the juicy part, the part where people can never define what value is in neoclassical political economics. Anyway,
Leo. I think that value under a capitalist system is just. I mean, it's kind of what you're saying, that it's the labor by replication of commodities, but I think they just also include the labor by non-replication of commodities. So
well, then it can't mean what I mean.
Well, yeah, but it includes what you mean, but also is the external services like the person driving the truck or the person doing the sales and things like that. It just includes all of those things that you're excluding. But what I don't get is why, if you're going an internal critique,
So value is just labor simplicator?
Include the labors that capitalism would include in that value proposition.
Well, but see, you just told me that its definition of value includes things that I don't, but you didn't give me what that definition is. Is your definition just labor simplicator?
Well, yeah, labor and it's affected by.
So if I dig a hole, that's valuable under the capitalist mode of production because it's just
like
labor simplicator.
As I just said, it's affected by demand as well and other external factors. So yeah, if you dig a hole, it's valuable. Value may be incredibly low because there is no demand for your hole. If somebody then if you find something down that hole, then somebody says, "Hey, there's gold in them there holes," then that hole becomes valuable.
Okay, yeah, this isn't really helping me understand what value is supposed to mean.
Okay, well we're moving on.
Think of it like, what would you give up to receive something else? It's kind of like how you value something. Would you give up a whole day's labor? Would you give up what in your savings would you give up for that?
Well, that just seems to be like a broader philosophy. Yeah, but again, these are kind of like examples. Like, notice how I gave like a working what I mean when I say value. I didn't just use examples, and that's what I struggle with. Like, I need what do you mean by value? Not examples, not measures of it. What it means. Importance,
worth, or usefulness of something.
Yeah, but I mean, I can accept that, but then that just, I mean, everything could be valuable. Valuable just seems to be so ambiguous then that it doesn't really apply to anything.
Well, you can value anything.
That also, but like this seems to be turning more to like broader philosophical or like aesthetic usages of value.
Like I said, I'm not big on economics, so I don't really find that surprising. I get what you're saying though. I just would think that value is any contribution to the end product of a or the end result of a product, whether that is labor, added stuff or not.
Well, I mean, that kind of is what value is in the labor theory of value. Selling a product isn't like contributing to its manufacture. It's already manufactured and you're just selling it.
Yes, but selling it adds to the end value of that product.
And what do you mean by value here?
Else. Okay, so
it's Go ahead.
Yeah, I think it's sort of I mean, it is related to the price of something. So by value, I would mean the total contribution to the end price of a product or service.
So you would consider rents to be value when the capitalist just increases the price by 50 cents to make it cost more to increase his profits. Since that contributes to the end price, that's value?
Well, I think there's external factors in it, like demand.
That might be how much the landowner values his land.
I don't really know what it means. Say land has value. That's weird. Land doesn't labor.
But you have. So are you just don't understand how we're using value?
Yeah, and I really genuinely, and I'm not saying this to be mean or anything like that, but I'm not getting a solid definition of what you guys mean by value.
Let us think about it, Leo, because I'm
that's
not
fine.
huge on economics, mate. But to address,
it's not like you're doing something wrong. I just want to clarify.
Yeah, no, I got you, mate. It's no problem. I'm having again, my background is not going to. I'm terrible at economics, so I'm finding it hard to explain what I mean. But I think that I would define value probably much the same as you do. Don't get me wrong. I have no doubt that sort of socially acceptable labor adds value to a product. But I also think value is added by the services that get that product to the end point, like driving a truck or selling it on a market or doing any of the labor associated with providing the product to an end result. I don't see
it seems to me
the value of something would exclude those things.
So it seems that you're saying something like the value would be not just the labor contributed to the reproduction of a commodity, but the labor contributed by getting it to its customer. Correct.
Yes. So even marketing would have value to me because it marketing done correctly would inform people of where they can get the product, how they can get the product. It would actually cut down on their labor trying to find the product that they're after. So that's why I think it adds value, and that's why I would use value in that way.
And do you think that value is realized in the price or not?
I think it can be, definitely can be.
Okay. Because it's interesting. I don't think that when a truck driver drives a load of lumber to a job site, that now the lumber is more expensive because of the value that he's added. At least in the capitalist mode of production, it doesn't seem that be the case. So I guess I would say that if we're including like service, like salespersons, truck drivers into value, then there's going to be an issue there, because why is it then that they don't increase the price? Is their value just not realized? And if so, why is the capitalist not seeking to realize the profit of their value?
That's not true, Leo. If you're sort of pricing a project, for instance, you're doing project estimations, for instance, and you have, say you buy labor off of a company that will drive it out there, you'll have one price for that. But you do have to factor in if you do need to transport those materials. So that will be factored in the estimation for that company. The price
this is done before it's delivered.
So if I say I value services that deliver resources to me, like, you don't know what that means at all?
If you said I value resources that deliver things to me, no, I would understand what you mean.
Services that deliver
what I would
resources.
understand you to mean by value there is just different than what value means in the LTV.
But you do understand what we mean by it, right? If I put it
in that instance, yeah, and it's just different than what you mean in the LTV. But I also wouldn't consider that usage of value to be like what value would mean under like a capitalist mode of production, because I don't think it actually has a working definition of value.
Well, I must admit that the term of value is very subjective kind of thing. So it matters what. But I think
economics demand is very subjective.
Yeah, no, I get you. But I think that's more demand. So if I really, really want something, right, I would factor that into the value of a product to make the price, but that's a different thing. That's the demand that it has. Yeah, am I wrong in that?
Wait, saying that like when demand increases, the price increases? I wouldn't deny that.
Yeah,
and
but
value
that seems-
increases.
Well, no,
I don't think that demand increases value. I think it increases price, but I don't think it increases value.
Yeah, because it just say somebody really, really, does it increase the value? Does demand increase the actual value of something?
I think it depends on what is meant by value. How I mean it, no.
Beanie Babies used to be more valuable. Baseball cards gain value as they age. You know, things can appreciate or depreciate in value.
I think that Snake is.
Oh, I'm okay with
your definition of value is completely different. I get what you're saying. I get what you're both saying, actually.
But we are using different definitions.
Yeah. No, I get that. It's
I don't know what your definition is yet, to be completely honest.
Well, here's in economics, economic value is the measure of a benefit provided by a good or service to the economic agent. Does that make any sense?
A benefit provided by a good or service. Yeah, that's just okay. Yeah. It doesn't really tell me much.
So something like life-saving medicine may not be expensive, but it has a huge amount of value, right? Would I be right in saying
there's some sense in which it has value. I don't think it. I mean, the sense in which it has economic value is only going to be, I think, given in terms of the labor that's used to produce it. But
I think we agree value and price are variable. There's some correlation there, but I think we can agree that they're not the same thing.
I don't
think price and value are the same thing.
I don't think that Leo would say that the value is variable, though. I mean, it seems to be, from his perspective, a set.
Well, value can vary, yeah.
Well, I mean, yeah, with the cost of the materials and stuff. But I guess what Snake's sort of saying is that Snake's sort of saying.
Well, I would think value would vary as a result of either increases or decreases in the amount of labor to reproduce the commodity.
Right. There are variables there, right? What Snake's saying is that value can increase or decrease based upon perception of somebody, right? Am I right in saying that, Snake?
Yeah, that's part of it.
Right. That's what he said.
Wait, I'm sorry. One more time.
Value can vary depending on the perception of somebody, like the economic agent that is obtaining the product. It can vary basing on their simple perception of the value being greater or lower.
I mean, I think I can agree with that, but that just doesn't seem to be like an economic. That seems to be like some sort of philosophical notion of value.
Sure. Yeah.
And this is going to be the problem. Is like with the definition that Snake provided. Can I ask where that was from? Because I feel like I've read that. Was that from Investopedia?
I think it's just from Wikipedia. I just Googled value, economic value definition.
Okay. Because when I heard it, it doesn't.
These are just the general understandings of how value is used in general, like colloquially.
I think it's usage, but it doesn't tell me anything about like the economy and how it works. That's why I'm just a little. It's just a little confusing to me.
But with your definition, we don't understand why people consider, like, I don't even know what other word to use other than why people value delivery services, why people value diamonds.
What do you mean when you say value those things?
He's talking about his definition.
They see some kind of benefit or gain from that. And like from your perspective, like, okay, if robots created water, it would have zero value because there's no socially necessary labor going into it, versus if it took humans like all day to get one bucket of water.
That would be true, yes.
It has a different value.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we can see this. I think Bic pens would cost a lot more if the ways in which they're produced weren't machinized. If it was actually humans putting them together, I think they'd cost more.
Right, but I think that the value of that Bic pen Yeah, I'm not sure that the value would actually increase if it was like a lot more difficult to make them.
Well, no, I'm
Well,
not necessarily saying more difficult, but if it took like actual human labor, I think they would cost more.
I have to head out, but
Oh,
I
I'm
will
not
say
sure.
labor can increase value for sure. But I think that there are things that the labor theory of value does not consider valuable, which also contribute to value.
Well, when you say contribute to value, I was just going to depend on what you mean by that.
Well, I got to head out, but I'm sure you and I will continue this conversation.
They are never ending, aren't they?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was good to see you, Snake. Thanks
Yeah,
for
man.
dropping by, man. I really appreciate it. It's so good to talk to you again.
Yeah.
Take it easy, Snake. It was good seeing you.
I just said
Subscribe.
First.